Hi, everyone. Welcome to your first breakout session. This is the Consumer Conundrum panel. How can we help consumers stop wasting so much food? As you heard this morning with Secretary Vilsack and Dana, there's a lot of momentum when it comes to consumer food waste lately, and we're excited that a lot of that is due to the people that you're going to hear from this morning on this panel. But before I hand things over to our moderator, I thought it would be fun to share this. This is a brochure that someone left on my door a couple weeks ago. I won't read you the whole thing, but it says, "Solving food waste. Hi, my name is Tommy, and for an environmental science project for my school, I am working on cutting back on food waste on a personal level and reaching out to my community to educate them about food waste and ways we can cut back on it." So it even uses some refed statistics in it, which I was impressed by. I have never met Tommy. I don't know all of my neighbors, but I thought this was a great example of a consumer food waste solution. This is a consumer education campaign, and however small in scale, it's the type of information that consumers need to better manage their food. So some of our panelists will be talking about consumer education and about how they're working to help get consumers that information. So with that, I will hand it over to our moderator, Turow-Paul. She is the founder and executive director of Food for Climate League, and she is a leading expert on millennial and Gen Z global food culture. So welcome, Eve.
Hello, everyone. As you trickle in, come in to there's lots of open space. We don't bite, I promise. I am so excited about this panel. Jeffrey and the Refed team pulled together an amazing group of people to speak with you all today. Because they're so amazing, we changed up the format. So the way that this is going to work is every person's going to get 5 minutes to present on a topic. Then we're going to have a Q&A. Jot down your notes. There is going to be time for open Q&A. So as you're listening to folks, feel free, jot down your questions. There's a mic in the center of the room that we're going to get to towards the end of the panel. And to kick things off, we have John Aitken. John, I'm going to give your bio. You can come on up, but I'm going to talk about you for a minute. John is a senior social scientist at the MITRE Corporation with a background in industrial and organizational psychology. His research applies a multi-level lens to problems related to human behavior, performance, and well-being across multiple frames and levels of analysis. He has expertise in quant and qualitative data, survey design and measurement, field experimentation. John is the data analyst for the Food Waste Solutions Project. And John, come on up. I'm going to give you the clicker.
Thank you.
So you have the job of setting the stage for everyone here.
Got it.
I'm arming you with what you need. You and your team at MITRE recently released study results of a large-scale study on food waste in the U.S. Can you just tell us a little bit in these 5 minutes about what you found, how much are consumers wasting, and what are some of the reasons you saw for that? Okay.
Yes, I certainly can. So let me see. Last year, my team at MITRE, as well in partnership with Gallup, as well as a bunch of other organizations, we conducted a large-scale study of a nationally representative survey of around 9,000 households, and the two real goals were to estimate how much food waste is being measured per week in the average home, and then what are the kinds of behaviors, the things people are doing, and attitudes, the things people are thinking about and feeling about these issues that can explain, that can provide kind of avenues to tackle that waste. In terms of the amount, we found that the average household was wasting around 6 cups of edible food. That's excluding scraps like rinds and peels and stuff like that. So 6 cups of food is, over the course of a year, around 320 cups per household, and what is a cup? And that roughly is about over 300 takeout containers of food. This is edible food being wasted, like I said, not inedible. And as part of this too, we were really interested in the household food waste level, but with the amount of data we were able to collect, we were able to also estimate state level food waste on a weekly basis. So that was the amount that we were looking at. The data for this, the survey as well, is all available online, so a lot of stuff to look into if you're interested in that kind of stuff. But so that being the amount, the other thing we were interested in is what are the things people are doing that is really accounting for that amount of food waste? What's ineffective, what's effective, what are the behavioral ways that we kind of target food waste? And so we looked at a bunch of different stuff. Like I said, it's all online if you're interested in the other stuff we looked at. But two things that really came out were leftover usage and date label like sensitivity or whatever. Basically, households that were more efficiently using their leftovers were wasting around 3.5 times as less as more inefficient households. These are households that are incorporating their leftovers into later meals, actually eating their leftovers, stuff like that. So leftover usage was a really key behavioral driver of food waste, and the other was households that were just wasting food that had passed its date label without really testing, using their senses. Those households were wasting a lot more food. So those were two behavioral factors that we were looking at that really emerged, and this is also against like demographics, like household size, education, income, stuff like that. So if these are the things that people are doing, two really key behavioral avenues for why waste is being produced, the other thing we wanted to know is how do you reach people and kind of promote better behaviors to solve this issue? And so we're also looking at people's concerns. And basically, what we were finding is people are extremely concerned about, why do they care about this? They care about it for reasons that are personal, local to their household. Things like prices, the healthiness of diet. They are much, much less concerned about things like that are potentially more abstract on a global scale, maybe more holistic, like environmental impact and stuff like that. So in this survey, we're basically finding that people are really approaching this issue from a much more personal, household, my family kind of perspective. And so the other thing we wanted to look at is, this is a huge issue. Do people feel like there is the potential to change here? If people don't feel that, then change is going to be much harder to achieve. And we found that most people, over 50%, agreed that there were things that could be done to reduce food waste. Some didn't, but in general, there seems to be a sentiment that this is a problem that is solvable. And so if the average household is wasting around 6 cups of food a week, but believes that this is a potentially solvable solution, it really becomes about how are you framing the message and what are the kinds of solutions that you're using and focusing on to empower people, such as, for example, helping them interpret date labels and use their leftovers and things like that. So yeah, that's all I've got. So I'll pass it off to the next person. But like I said, all this stuff is available online, so a lot more stuff to dig through. But yeah.
That was setting the stage perfectly. Job well done. Okay. Our next speaker is Harry Tannenbaum. Harry, I'm going to talk about you for a minute too, but you can come sit up. You can sit up here while I talk about you. That's okay. There's also for folks. There's plenty of open seats too. Feel free to come and get comfy. We have several more speakers coming in. So Harry is the president and co-founder of Mill, where he has built an entirely new system to prevent waste, starting with food. Mill makes it easy to prevent food waste at home with an innovative new kitchen experience and pathways that keep food out of landfills. You've probably seen the commercials on TV at this point. Prior to Mill, Harry led the centralized analytics group and e-commerce business at Nest, which launched the first learning thermostat and became the leading brand for the connected home. During his time at Nest, Harry helped to scale the business to more than $1 billion in annual revenue. Following Nest's acquisition by Google, he was director in Google's hardware organization focused on e-commerce and subscription offerings. Now he's using all of that intel to tackle food waste. He received his bachelor's degree in economics from UCLA. That's also in your bio. Okay, Harry. Your company at Mill offers a tech-based solution for consumer kitchens. The Mill bin, for those who don't know, dehydrates and grinds food scraps into an odorless powder that can be added to a home compost pile or sent back to the company to be converted into chicken feed. Your company has gathered a lot of data about what consumers are wasting, how much, and how behaviors can change when reducing waste becomes something convenient and easy, to what John was just talking about. What do you think is the most interesting insight you've learned so far over the past year? Will you tell us what you found? Yeah. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I am so insanely excited to share some stuff. We were here last year as we were just getting started, and I felt like the message was, hey, we have this idea and this new technology, and we're back this year with a ton of data, and in short, it's working. So we're really excited about that. Eve, I've probably got 3 things that were most surprising that are in here. Okay, that's a picture of me. Formatting a little bit gummed up here. But look, the reason we're working on this problem is because fundamentally it's a behavior change problem. And behavior change problems are solvable if you make things frictionless and easy. Nest, the prior company, we were able to scale this technology into tens of millions of homes, and the core guiding principle was make something beautiful, make something frictionless, make something you can justify to your spouse, and something that does something good for the planet. And we saved enough electricity to power all the households in the US for a month. It's not just Nest people at Mill. We've got like a broad swath of folks with amazing experience. And yeah, we're making this new kind of appliance that eats food. And the benefits here, the way it works, I guess I don't have a mic that moves with me. So it's not a magic trick, but it kind of feels like magic. Food is about 80% water. And when you dewater the material, it gets really small. And when there's no water in food, it doesn't rot. So this bin, for me and my wife, we cook a lot at home, it takes about a month to fill up. So you talk about the MITRE findings about making it convenient and efficient in your household, it hits on that. The material is non-putrescible. It's still food minus water, and that makes it easier for us to get it back into local food systems. So there are multiple pathways that this can move through, but one thing we're really excited about, I'm looking at Brenda Platt in the front row here, is the ability to power community composting and power local loops. And then the last thing is data. And we think about what Secretary Vilsack said this morning. We think about other items highlighted in the MITRE report. If this is about saving money, we need to understand how much we're wasting before we can take action. Okay. Jumping forward, so goal is to keep food out of the landfill. We can feed soil with this material. We can feed compost. We also, over the last year, got FDA and AFCO approval to use this material as an ingredient in animal feed, which is very cool as we move up the EPA's wasted food hierarchy. But the best thing we can do is source reduction, and more on that in a second. So things that are happening. Last year, we built 10,000 of these, and they all went out into the world. We've had 2.1 million online device days, around 9 million individual food additions to the bins. And this appliance is like a scale in disguise. And we're very sensitive. I'm pretty sensitive myself. But the bin is very sensitive to about 15 grams of mass addition. So that's like 3 raspberries if you put into it. And we're processing more material every day. So we just crossed our 2 millionth pound of food processed by a mill recently. It's pretty cool. You heard it here first. And the key is, I would say this is the biggest learning, that precise measurement is really important in behavior change. If we can show you information, you will take action. And this is similar to what we learned at Nest. You can have a thermostat that programs itself, but there's a whole nother world of behavior change when we say, hey, here's how much you are running the AC versus the average person in your zip code. Okay, data, never before seen, excited to share. 1 minute to go, says Jeff. I might run half over. Okay, here's the amount of food added, 25th percentile median, 75th percentile for mill bins. This is around those 9 million data points of additions, and we have incredible granularity to when food waste occurs. This is how customers self-reported how they manage their food scraps before mill. About 65% of mill users said they put all or most of their food in the garbage. This is the data after having mill in a home. 10x improvement. 68% of people reporting putting 0 food scraps in the garbage. We asked people, since having mill, has your perception of how much food you've wasted changed? 3 out of 4 people said they wasted more food than they thought. And I think this is the very tricky thing about this problem. It's a huge problem, but nobody thinks they waste as much food as they do. When we asked them what drove this, it was interesting. It wasn't just the mill bin itself. Most commonly, it was a mixture of the device and the data. So measurement is really, really key. Last one. Beyond anything we thought was possible here, to be completely honest. We asked people, since having mill, has having mill resulted in source reduction of scraps? Close to 5 out of 10 people said that having a mill bin resulted in source reduction for them at home. And when we asked them why, the largest 2 drivers were cooking differently and shopping differently. Holy cow. So this is survey data. Now let's go back to device data and look at those 2 million device days. I think this is the largest data set of household waste behavior ever generated. This is 2 million days plotted over time around the average daily addition to a mill and the median daily addition to a mill. And what's pretty frickin' cool is it supports what we saw on the last slide. And this is provisional. I want to do some research with Dr. Rowe at OSU, but we're seeing a 20 to 25% decline in mass additions to mill with consistent usage over the first 4 months. And that's after we start to present people with data around just how much they're wasting. All right, I'm giving myself the hook now. The last thing I'll say is contamination is a big problem, generally in organics recycling. What you see on the left is a 1,200-pound super sack that's on its way to become animal feed. What you see on the right is the amount of contamination we collected from the 75 or so households that sent us back that material. We're really frickin' excited about what we're doing at Mill. We're collaborating with cities. We're working with other brands and companies to get the word out. But I'm just wildly grateful to everybody in this room and to ReFed and really proud to share this information. Thank you.
Hopefully you can see why we wanted to give people time to speak and present. Again, there's still a few more empty chairs here, so those in the back, feel free, come on in, come on down. Next up is Brian Rowe. Brian, oh.
I wasn't cheating there. So.
Yeah. Brian is the Van Buren Professor in the Department of Agricultural, Environmental, and Development Economics at Ohio State. Dr. Rowe has worked broadly in the areas of agricultural and environmental economics, focusing on issues including food waste, agricultural marketing, information policy, farm nutrient management, and more. Dr. Rowe helped form and currently leads the Ohio State Food Waste Collaborative and co-directs the NSF-funded research network focused on addressing food waste. Come on up, please, sir. I'm gonna hand you the clicker, but then I have my prompt.
Sure.
Okay. We're excited to see the recent announcement, for those who haven't seen it, that Ohio State University was selected to lead a $2.5 million U.S. Department of Agriculture funded effort to conduct and evaluate a pilot consumer campaign to test educational messages and materials designed to meaningfully reduce the amount of food that's wasted in U.S. households. And you're leading that effort. So I hope, can you tell us a bit about about that work and how it'll expand on what we already know on why consumers are wasting food?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, we're humbled working with Rutgers University. Sarah El-Nakib, who's also, I don't know if she's in the room, but she's definitely here at the conference to try to understand the efficacy of existing consumer campaigns to reduce food waste. But to do that, we really have to think about consumers in situ, like Harry's been thinking about deeply. Ran Lee, valued co-author of mine, student of mine at Ohio State University with funding from NSF and USDA, have really been digging into this to try to understand consumers so that we can find those campaigns that are going to be most efficacious to help them achieve those results that the Secretary was talking about this morning of finding savings in their own homes. And what we're finding as we look at the literature and our own research is really understanding about time use in households and how we can get them to use their time most efficaciously to reduce food waste. Some big lessons, some great work done by Seung-Hoon Lee at the University of Missouri, another great scholar working in this area, looked at the South Korean experiment where they tax food waste at the consumer level. They have to take it out to a kiosk, they have to code in, and they're charged about 3 cents a pound per waste. Every year, the average citizen in this evaluation was spending only about less than $20 a year to pay for this tax, but they were actually saving $172 per year because they purchased less groceries, which translated to about a 20% reduction in their food waste at their household level. Now, the issue is they were spending more than an hour, almost an hour and a quarter additional of their time each week to achieve those reduction in results. But the big issue here, this is an initial assessment, and so we're wondering if over time or with educational campaigns, if we can reduce the amount of time it takes for them to achieve that type of reduction and to have all this. Obviously, South Korea, a tax on food waste may not be working in many cities, if any cities in the United States, so we have to think more broadly about that. But another policy that's really shifted how consumers are, their relationship with food scraps is in California. And we'll talk about that in a minute. We've been tracking this with our NSF Household Food Waste Tracking Survey, which is available here for public viewing at the website connected here. And we're finding that people are spending slightly less than about 3 hours per week out of the more than 15 hours a week that they're spending on all food activities. About 3 hours of that is on actually trying to reduce food waste at various stages. So we're trying to map out exactly where, through Rand Lee's great work here, people are putting their effort in their homes across the United States to try to reduce this food waste. Now, SB 1383 in California has given people a new relationship with their food waste in their homes because residents are now being asked increasingly to actually separate out their food waste in their homes into a separate green bin. Our tracking survey, looking at activity in California post-2022 when this was implemented, finds that, yes, obviously these things are staying out of the landfill, meeting the methane urgency that California seeks from this bill, but we're actually seeing that the self-reported amount of waste actually went up by 20% in California. So this is an interesting contrast, and Harry and I have talked back and forth about the differences between maybe a mill user group and a general population of California having different motivations around this. Because we're finding that when we go to their American Time Use survey, a whole different survey, that they're spending a little over about 14% additional time than they normally did prior to 2022 cleaning up their kitchen space, separating out that food waste, and they're actually carving into their overall time food budget and using less of their time in preparing foods, and that might be eating into their efficacy of reducing food waste at earlier stages of that. And so the big issue here is, did we miss the boat in California by potentially not having messaging that helped them also think about, great, you're putting food in a green bin, that's going to keep the methane away by keeping it out of the landfill, but perhaps we could also add some messaging that would suggest that you could actually, if you see your green bin getting full, that means maybe there are dollar savings for you if you reallocate some of your time and reduce food waste. So if you see here, all the messaging that California sent out with this focus on how the food scraps would be turned into good products like energy and compost, but not so much effort on that you could also be saving money and saving other things by reducing your food waste. So last week I was at a conference with Richard Swanell from RAP, and we talked about, wouldn't it be interesting if we could develop a compost bin where we could gradiate the levels of amounts there to actual dollar amounts, and so that people could see as they fill their compost bin, this might be an indicative amount of food that you could be saving if you were actually able to get rid of your additional food waste in your home. Would require a lot of testing, but it might be something interesting to try out here as all of us are aiming to try to really drive consumers to get the most use out of their time, the most out of their budget, and kind of meet some of the objectives that the Secretary was talking about this morning in the main session. All right, I'll stop there.
Thank you. And Harry and I are mumbling about perception change and behavior change and what's the difference between self-reported and the actual data metrics. And this is all extremely fascinating and great to have people here who are working on all different facets of this. So next up is Jenna Dowd. And now I need to find your bio, because Jenna, I had it right in front of me and now it has disappeared. Okay, give me 1 second, folks, and I will find it for you. Somewhere in here. Okay. Jenna is Senior Brand Manager for Hellmann's Mayonnaise at Unilever, the largest food brand in Unilever North America, and responsible for the U.S. business, including brand engagement and their purpose, Make Taste Not Waste campaign. Prior to Hellmann's, she worked on the Knorr brand for 6 years, where she spearheaded the brand's master brand creative campaign work, which elevated their social impact programs around affordable nutrition and led the Knorr Bouillon business to 3 years of consecutive growth. Jenna, please come on up, and I'm going to give you your speaker prompt for the day. Again, I have too many pieces of paper in front of me. Okay, here's your clicker. Thank you. Jenna, your work at Hellmann's is focused on helping consumers keep food from going to waste in the first place, with a big focus on consumer education that can drive behavior change. So please share, what are some of the learnings that you found, and how did they lead to the development of Hellmann's Make Taste Not Waste campaign?
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Really excited to be here. We've had my introduction already, but Jenna Dowd, Senior Brand Manager for Hellmann's US. And I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, what does Hellmann's mayonnaise have to do with food waste? And why are we here at Refed? Well, I'm here to tell you, and I'm very excited about it. We all know that food waste is a massive environmental and societal issue, with over a third of the food manufactured globally actually going to waste, and Americans discard more food than any other country. But this isn't intentional. We all know that feeling of shame when you find that bag of spinach in your refrigerator and you think, oh, I should have used this a few days ago, and that really major source of guilt that it brings as you're kind of doing the fridge clean out before your next grocery shop. Hellmann's brand purpose, Make Taste Not Waste, is directly rooted in our product. We believe in the power of leftovers. A big source of food waste is that Americans often feel like leftovers are boring, or they have a long day and they're not quite inspired when they get home to figure out what to do with a chicken breast, green onions, and some shredded cheese that they find in their refrigerator. But with a dollop of mayonnaise, you could turn those seemingly random ingredients, thank you, into a buffalo chicken salad. And with these really easy, simple recipes that you can remember, just like chicken salad, green onions, dollop of mayonnaise, I'm sure you all remember that now. You know how, no matter how long your day is, you now at the back of your mind go, okay, I can make this and it's delicious. And that's really where our purpose comes from, is how can we use the simple ingredients that you find most often in refrigerators to inspire really delicious meals to make this as seamless for consumers as possible. The most important thing when we're communicating our campaigns around Make Taste Not Waste is that we need to make it convenient. As I said, a lot of times food waste is an unintended outcome. 60% of Americans, as you saw, feel guilty when they're wasting food. And often they have a long day, they're uninspired, they just aren't educated on what they actually want to cook, and you don't want to make this an overwhelming barrier for them. So with that, we have a three-prong approach that we take for our Make Taste Not Waste purpose program. The first, which is the focus that we'll talk about the most today, is how do we eliminate food waste in the home with consumers. The second one is how can we help to eliminate food waste in the community by partnering with organizations to rescue food from farms, grocery stores, restaurants, etc. And a third is society. How can we lend our brand voice to important movements that many of you are probably working on, such as the Date Labeling Act, to help to make systems easier and more seamless for consumers to avoid food waste. And being a brand whose advertisements are seen by millions of Americans every year, our brand voice has a lot of power to be able to shed light on this important issue that a lot of people just don't even realize that they're a part of. We have three pillars of our communications approach when it comes to communicating consumer food waste. and making people aware of the problem. The first one is we have to make it easy. We have a series of what we call flexipes on hellmann's.com. I encourage you to check them out. Every single recipe has no more than 3 simple steps, and they use the most commonly wasted and pantry ingredients. Got to make this as seamless as possible to inspire people to use up their ingredients. The second is, how do we make it fun? Some of you might have heard last year, if you were here, about our new app, Fridge Night, which has now been out for a bit. I encourage you to check it out and try downloading it. This is a gamified experience where just one night a week you can make it Fridge Night Day, and you enter in all of the ingredients you have in your refrigerator, and the generator will help to spit out some inspiring recipes. It's a really fun way to gamify in your household. And the third, of course, is how do we make it unmissable? I hope that some of you met our friend Mayo Cat this year during the Super Bowl. During the Super Bowl, if you didn't catch it, Mayo Cat inspired Kate McKinnon to actually turn her leftover chicken, green onions, and cheese into a delicious buffalo chicken sandwich. Those are all common ingredients left over the day after Super Bowl. And this is the biggest stage in American advertising. This year, it actually had more viewers, it was the second most US viewed event after the moon landing. So the power of the eyeballs of Super Bowl is something I'm really proud that we've been able to use our platform to bring awareness to this really important issue. And while food waste is no laughing matter, we do try to do it in a way that is lighthearted and really can get this message into the hearts and minds of the average consumer that might not typically be thinking about these things. And this year we took it a step further. So the day after Super Bowl is one of the biggest food waste days of the year after Thanksgiving, Big Game Monday. But it's also infamous for another reason, which maybe some of you are familiar with, the #1 day that Americans call out sick from work. So since so many Americans were already planning to call out sick this day, we took advantage and decided to inspire them to take their sick day for a higher cause and introduce Sick of Food Waste Day. So with this, we were able to actually partner with a lot of different influencers across lifestyle, food, and more purpose-leaning, and educate people and encourage people that if they're taking a sick day from work that day to actually use up some of their big game leftovers from the refrigerator and inspire them with recipes. And if they took to social media to show us how they were making those leftover recipes into a delicious meal, they were entered to win a chance to go to the big game in New Orleans next year. So really putting a big award out there as well. And of course, tangible impacts. So I want to say a big thank you to our friends at Food Recovery Network. I'm not sure if some of you are in the room right now, but of course we wanted to make tangible impact on the ground at the players' tailgate. And in partnership with the Food Recovery Network, we're able to rescue 4,000 pounds of food at the players' tailgate on site at the Super Bowl. We have a few more food rescue plans throughout the year at other major events, so really excited to continue partnering for the tangible impact there. That's all I have for you guys today, and really looking forward to continued partnership with ReFed and all the organizations who are here. Thank you.
Okay, and now for our final panelist, Erin McCluskey. Erin is a senior food waste specialist at WRAP, an international climate NGO tackling food waste globally. She's a dedicated advocate for sustainable food systems with experience spanning nonprofits and corporate innovation. Prior to WRAP, Erin was the managing director of the Ocean Plastics Leadership Network, and she was also senior manager of the Circular Economy of Food Collab at IDEO. So Erin, please come on up to the stage. I'm going to hand you the almighty clicker, and I'll give the final prompt, and then after this, we'll invite everybody up for some Q&A and some discussion. So first, this is your important clicker. WRAP has done a lot of research with consumers in the UK. What were your findings, and what does that tell us about ways we can help consumers stop wasting so much food here in the US?
Great, thanks. Well, I personally want to vote to make Super Bowl Monday a national holiday. So thanks for that prompt. I'm Erin, a senior food waste specialist at WRAP. I'm going to talk a little bit about bringing the research of what we've done in the UK to you all, and then our approach to designing interventions that target the behaviors behind that food waste. So who's WRAP? So I don't know how many have heard of us. Great. I knew it. So just in case you didn't know, WRAP is an international climate NGO that focuses on bringing the circular economy and really focusing on food waste as one of our flagship programs. So we work with businesses, governments, NGOs, and to deliver impact globally. And WRAP has worked on food waste specifically for over 20 years through our quartile commitment, bringing businesses and governments together to actually tackle this problem throughout the supply chain. But we've done a lot of things on consumer behavior change, or what we like to call citizen behavior change. You might have seen our brand, our campaign around I Love Food, Hate Waste, which helps citizens really keep the food out of the trash, and our team also runs Food Waste Action Week in the UK. And over the last 15 years, we've collected quite a bit of amount of data on household food waste of citizens in the UK and internationally. So the problem, not to reiterate the fact that we are in a bit of a formatting's a little weird, sorry about that. As in the US, households in the UK waste a lot of food. So about half of food waste happens in the households. 74% of that is thrown away, is edible. And not to reiterate what's already been said, but that's a lot of pounds of food per person per year, lots of money wasted, and a lot of carbon spent. So, I kind of want to focus on our research that we've done recently. So WRAP published a report last year that estimated a quantity and types of foods and drink wasted that was generated by UK households. So that research was done over 2021 and 2022, and it covered about 1,800 households. And those estimates were based on detailed compositional analysis, general food waste diaries, and just local authority waste streams. We found that the highest foods that were wasted were vegetables, fresh fruits, meals, drinks, dairy, and bakery items. So similar to what we see in the U.S. But it's really interesting is what the main reasons behind that food waste. So, like John said through his MITRE presentation, the immediate reasons for food being thrown away were obtained from, we learned from diary entries. These suggest that food that was not used in time, it either smelled or looked off or was past the date on the label. That accounted for about 40% of wasted food. So WRAP has, the formatting's a little off, but that's okay. So we have some steps to actually tackle these behaviors. So understanding the reason behind food waste from consumers themselves can give us a jumping off point to design effective interventions. So those interventions are actions that consumers can take or that companies can take to help consumers reduce their waste. So at WRAP, we use a series of steps to develop these interventions to help consumers. So we diagnose what the problem is, we design and test that design, and then we learn and adapt. So I want to give a bit of an example of this, and I brought a bit of show and tell. So using that design method, we sought to help citizens change their behaviors to stop wasting so much bread. So in bread in the UK, that's the second most wasted item of food in households, and represents about 80% of all bakery waste in the UK. So 23% of people wasted bread or baked goods because of the product smelled or looked off, and 31% said that it was past the date on the label, so they just thought they should throw it away. So the challenge was to develop and test packaging designs to drive food waste prevention behaviors. So the first step, again, was that we had to diagnose. So people underestimate how long bread actually lasts, and they don't value or even consider eating the bread that is left in the packages. And people buy more bread than they actually need. And we also have seen that freezing bread is a barrier rather than a convenience. So step two, design. So our design prompts in this challenge was, how do we encourage people to eat their bread for longer, improve value perceptions on the whole loaf, and optimize the storage and use of the bread at home. So I brought a bit of a show and tell of how we implemented this design, and I kind of wanted to bring it into a tangible space for us all. And a number of design concepts were tested, but focusing on freshness and storage, value and freezing, we designed this bag that has a bit of right here, a twist and tuck prompt to make sure that we're keeping the freshness in longer. There's also a freeze line that tells when consumers can actually start to freeze the bread and keep it fresher for longer. And then there's specific storage and use cases on the back. So the packaging really prompts consumers to reduce their food waste and gives them tips and it kind of educates them along the way. So, I pressed the wrong button. So, yeah, step 4, we designed these concepts and, we've tested them online with citizens, and the best performing features encourage positive behavior. So 70% of the citizens said that design would encourage them to perform the action of the storage, and they think that would keep the bread fresher for longer. So we adapted what we learned from that and implemented it into a more better packaging. And these packages were implemented by a retailer in the UK across all of their own bakery and bread products. So I think that's my time. Thanks, Jeffrey. Yeah, and I just want to say that the strategic approach to citizen behavior change from RAP is that it's going to take little prompts like this throughout the supply chain that actually make change. And it's not a silver bullet, but we're going to have to use retailers and CPG companies to actually prompt consumers to make the right decisions. And so it's an easier decision for them. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, panelists, for some amazing and thought-provoking presentations. So now we have some time for Q&A. I have some questions prepared, but then again, we do have a mic at the center of the room. So in about 5 minutes, I'm going to ask you all to surface your questions. So get thinking, get prepared. We could talk about this for hours or days or months. But I think that one of the questions that I would like to start with is actually for you, Brian. Which is, who is responsible for consumer food waste? Is it always the customer's fault?
No, definitely not. And I don't know if Ronnie Neff is in the room or not, but yeah, Ronnie, we were on a National Academy's report back in 2020, and the key to that report was empowering consumers through system-wide thinking. And so I think the themes that have been mentioned up here, frictionless, feedback, and enabling consumers to be able to do that on their own with systems feeding into that, becoming frictionless and with feedback is critical for being able to empower those consumers, because it's a lot to make the consumers fix the rest of the system when the rest of the system is oftentimes somewhat stacked in the favor of them. Want you to buy more, want you to use more, etc.
Along those lines, I think what's unique about this panel is that it's very cross-sector. So we have NGOs, we have large corporations, we have startups. So this is a question, I'll start Harry and then Erin if you wanted to speak to this as well, but how important is cross-sector collaboration in addressing consumer food waste?
I think it's critical. I think looking at this problem through a climate lens, food waste and loss is 12% of emissions. And if we're going to make a dent in that, we need systems change. And if we're going to change systems, we need new systems that are better, faster, and cheaper. And that can be investments in technology and messaging and research, but at some point, it's not the private sector alone or the public sector alone or households alone that can achieve this. It's through collaboration. And I think underpinning all of this, and I'll still go back to what Secretary Vilsack said this morning, it needs to make economic sense, to make environmental sense, and I think one of the best tailwinds we have in working on this problem is when we eliminate waste, we save money. And when we eliminate waste in systems, we have more efficient systems. So, as I think about some of our public-private collaboration, we did a year-long pilot with the city of Tacoma. That was all grounded in ideas that would make the city be able to run more efficiently. And I think that's a really powerful thing about working on food waste, is that we have that alignment from the get-go. But yeah, I think it's critical. I don't think we're going to make a huge dent with anyone on this panel thinking in a silo.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you touched on investment. I think that there still needs to be a lot more investment in the space. And what's promising about what, Secretary Vilsack said, there is now a lot of momentum right now, and a lot of players that wanted to have an impact in the space. And how do we leverage that in a way that we're working together in a pre-competitive space, that allows us to make synergistic decisions, and how can we elevate each other's work and take, understand that we want to achieve the same goal, and so how can we make each other more successful? And we're starting a program in the U.S. We've gotten funding from the Posner Foundation to do a 2-year citizen behavior change program here. And we're looking to partner with retailers to really make an impact on consumer behavior change in household food waste. So we know that's going to take a collaborative effort with retailers and also city partners in where we want to run our pilots. And I don't think change is going to happen if we don't emphasize the collaboration piece.
And I'll just say one other thing. You think about the waste industry, which I think really over time sees itself evolving into a materials management industry, and that there's more value in resources if we can get them to their highest and best use. And the way we do it today, where we truck around a lot of water in diesel trucks and bury it in the ground where it turns into poison, is just not the most efficient outcome. But from a pure dollars and cents standpoint, it's very helpful to companies that are facing headwinds around labor or cost of infrastructure to think about how their existing infrastructure can scale and be more efficient. So I think reducing food waste plays into that and delivers more efficiency there as well.
I want to open it up to questions from the crowd. If anyone has questions, I can't imagine there'd be no one. Yes, please.
Hi, this is for Mill. I wonder what the downline goal is for material like that once it becomes dehydrated. Because if you have a backyard and you can compost it, that's fine. But if you don't have a backyard, you can't cure it. What is the real goal for that material? And then, I guess what I'm trying to say is, is the vision to maybe start to create more decentralized composting solutions so people can then go drop that off somewhere because they can't process it. They can't use it at their home if they don't live in Georgia, like we do with backyards and stuff like that. So I just wonder what happens to that material once it's dehydrated if you can't cure it and compost it at home.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we felt like thinking about pathways was critical because the material, you can't make compost overnight. You can dehydrate food overnight. And one pathway we made, which is a national pathway, is one that goes to chicken feed, and that, a month and a half's worth of milled food scraps can go in a shoebox and be picked up by the U.S. Postal Service, and we're feeding chickens today in that manner. That's a big loop. Long term, we need to be building tighter local loops. And I think a collaboration I'll highlight there that shows some of where we're heading is something we're doing in the city of Phoenix, where we've partnered with a local community composter called Our City, who was previously collecting scraps once a week from households. Now they can go once a month to a household to get those same resources back to the farm and feed the community. I think the EPA's wasted food scale is really instructive here, and really source reduction is what we need to be driving towards for maximal impact. Then it's sort of like anything but the landfill, is the other side of the spectrum. And then I think there's going to be trade-offs for where local loops are possible or where we can get material to a higher and better use that, isn't down the sink, incinerated, or buried.
Yes.
Uh-oh, who said that? This is a great panel. I learned so much. I have so many questions. My head is... I am curious with the data, as we see in the U.S. that where people are going to get their food is changing dramatically. There are more dollar stores in the US than McDonald's, Target, Walmart, and Starbucks combined. And so that's more unhealthy, it's less locally produced, it's more overpackaged. I'm wondering, any of the studies, maybe John, I don't know, you at MITRE were looking at how were people, because one of you said that it was like 81% people are concerned about prices. So people are being driven to dollar stores and cheaper food, but it's not healthier and it's overpackaged and it's going to lead to more waste. So I'm just kind of curious on the data there, and then also on the consumer education. How do we get to where people are shopping to make the case that you actually can buy local healthy stuff, save money, because some of the dollar store data is showing that you actually pay more per container because they're giving you smaller servings. Anyway, there's more there, but I'm just curious what you all have to say about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. One of the aspects of the study we had conducted last year was, how do you measure food waste? That's been mentioned in this panel too. We used a survey and asked people to recall in general. But another way to do it is to, actually have people measure the food they're wasting every day in their actual homes. And so part of what we did last year too was we wanted to see, we developed an app to allow people to actually use a Bluetooth scale and measure like this item and this item and this item. And when you're able to get that granular, you're able to also look at where is the food coming from? How is it being disposed? Is it being composted? Is it being thrown in, garbage? And so I forget exactly, but what we were only able to do that with a subset, and the majority of food was coming still from like grocery stores. But we were also looking at, for example, restaurants or farmers markets or your own garden or stuff like that, or food pantries. And I think so. In general, we conducted a large-scale study. Most of it is still coming from grocery stores, but I think there is a real need to, measure these things in more targeted communities. The kind of trends that we are able to speak to are these kinds of larger ones, but obviously for a lot of people, they don't resonate at all. And so there's, I think, a real need to investigate for certain communities, where's the food coming from? What's the quality of the food and what's being done with it? And from a systems perspective, how are different communities experiencing this issue? So we were really focused more so on the larger scale stuff, but I think it's a really, really important avenue for research. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else
John, I'll note in our data, we find that, likewise, but grocery store shoppers tend to, and these are correlative results and not causative results. Grocery store shoppers tend to waste less. Those who are using clicks and drop-offs are probably more time-pressed and tend to waste a bit more because they probably have a very high value of their time and maybe they aren't able to reduce waste or they have time pressures elsewhere. Those who waste the less are actually those who only shop about every other week and are probably not buying a lot of fresh produce to begin with. They're probably using canned or frozen for those needs. And the other interesting finding that we found, there's one study out of Europe that shows that even though we are hesitant about talking about 2-for-1 deals, those shoppers who are really able to use that tend to find those. And so we've actually found, I think it was a study out of Denmark that found that 2-for-1 deals in Europe tend to correlate with people who are very efficacious in using that food. And so even though it doesn't make a lot of sense to promote that, it seems that when they're out there, people tend to be self-sorting and only the ones who can use the food tend to go for those types of offers, at least in the European context.
Jenna, did you want to add something?
Yes, I could speak to the consumer education part of your question. I think there's a few prongs to this, but we have very close relationships with all retailers in the United States, and it's been really important for us when we're actually at the point of sale, when those consumers are making those decisions, that we leverage our flexipes and our recipes to actually drive inspiration for how you can use the recipes in your shopping cart at the point of sale, whether it's on Walmart.com or in an in-shelf sign that you're seeing. We'll always almost always include a picture of a recipe so that we're not just inspiring you buy Hellmann's, but to say, buy Hellmann's, but here's how you should actually use it. Because it doesn't help us either if people are buying our product and it's just sitting in the fridge. We want to get it out and into more of the other ingredients in your pantry. And with all those recipes, we don't necessarily advertise it, but it's very important to us that they could be a part of a balanced diet, and also that they're affordable. So nothing crazy out of range, except unless there's an occasional moment that a retailer wants something like that. But trying to have that balance of nutrition, but also really promoting usage to get all the ingredients out of the pantry is very important to both our category, but also our purpose. One other thing we launched just a pilot of that you guys might have heard about, it's a bit new still. I think we made a preview to last year, is the Hellmann's Smart Jar. So another consumer education gap is a lot of people don't know for optimal food safety, you should keep your refrigerator at under 40 degrees. I don't think before I started working in foods I ever checked my refrigerator temperature. So we launched a Hellmann's Smart Jar where if your refrigerator was below 40 degrees and therefore in optimal food safety, you could read some like invisible ink on it. So it's actually an indicator of it. So there could be some really innovative packaging solutions in the future as well.
That's great. Your question was also making me think about consumer perception. And if we're spending less time procuring the food, do we value it less? How do we perceive that food also? There's so many different facets of this. We only have time for one more question.
Hello.
You can mingle after. Yeah.
We'll stay.
Hi, I'm Colin O'Brien from the George Washington University Office of Sustainability. Thank you all for being here and speaking. My question is for Jenna, just regarding, obviously you have a huge platform, huge audience. How are you tracking impact, and are you able to track, which of your messages resonate most with customers, and have you actually been able to track any behavior change? Is that possible or not?
Yeah, so we actually are about to have a report come out, I can't share the numbers yet, that our global team is curating to report on our Make Taste Not Waste platform. So we track across all global markets a variety of different things. One is how many impressions are we getting on our messages that are directly tied to Make Taste Not Waste. So we don't track necessarily like our core advertising, even though ultimately it's promoting usage of different ingredients here in your pantry. But out of all of the ads we put out into the world that are mainly focused on Make Taste Not Waste, such as Sick of Food Waste Day, how many impressions did we get? Were they from more green biz, or were they from true consumer outlets, which is really where you want to make the impact to people who aren't aware of the problem. The second could be we have a newsletter that goes out for our audience that we've identified as people who really are engaged with the topic of food waste or have raised their hands to be engaged with before. How many of them are opening it? How many of them are clicking into the app? We also track our Fridge Night app downloads. We kind of have two tent poles that we mostly promote. It first would be the Super Bowl, and the second would be Thanksgiving. Those are the two biggest food waste moments in America, so the ones that we really lean in on to make the biggest impact. So we have something fun coming for Thanksgiving I'm excited for you guys to see. And additionally, we have a really steady, I think, PR program for where are there moments when people are potentially about to waste food, and how can we intercept that. So every year our global team curates all the different impressions, engagements, but also with partners like Food Recovery Network, how many pounds of physical food have we recovered. So for example, the Super Bowl, we recovered 4,000 pounds, but we're on track to have, I think, 3 more programs this year, so hoping to get into the double digit, or thousands, 12,000, hopefully. But that's just the United States. This is actually a global program, so looking forward to that report coming out in the very near future.
Great, thank you, very impressive.
Round of applause for our panelists.